defensive backs get defensive and be enough for them to make a rise out of the bottom of the AFC East? We'll tell you here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am your host, Tony Wiggins. Seems like I've been covering this team for all my life, but they haven't existed all my life. They actually started out in 1995, and for a better part of about 75%, I've been covering the team in one shape or form of another. We're going to talk defensive backs today, and we first like to thank you for joining us and making us your first listen, as always. And reminding you, we're free on all platforms, YouTube as well as wherever you get your podcast via audio. Make sure you lock in and subscribe to our page. We're going to talk defensive backs, as I said today. Those guys, they have to get back to being outright defensive. Last year, the numbers probably weren't as bad as the team's record would indicate, but there are some things that they need to stop doing, and we'll discuss that. 2, we'll talk about the pure numbers in segment 2. Who are they going to keep? How many guys are they going to keep on the roster? And 4, we're going to, not 4, but 3, in segment 3, we're going to basically talk specifics about whether it's going to be one guy leading the pack or if it's going to be some sort of leadership by committee. So we'll talk about all of those things here today. But first and foremost, I got to let y'all know that if you haven't noticed, over the recent years, I just say 5-6 years, the Jaguars have used more priority resources being draft picks and free agency. They've used more priority resources on defensive backs than any other position. It's a little bit misleading. It's a little bit semantics because defensive backs is one of the 3 positions where you're going to keep the most people. I'd probably say one of the 2 positions because usually offensive line, they keep 8, maybe 9. But for the most part, they keep 8 guys that they're ready to go out and do battle with. The defensive line, when you consider if they were running a 4-3, would have probably just as many people as the secondary. But now that they're running this 3-4, I think they're going to keep 7 defensive linemen, full-time guys who have their hand on the ground. They'll probably keep maybe 4 guys on the edge. So combined, that would be 7. But there's a little bit of scheme versatility there, and there's a little bit of play in that area. But the defensive backs, make no mistake about it, every single year teams keep 10 people or 9 at least. And the reason why they do that is because of sub packages. So the average team starts 4 guys, 2 corners and 2 safeties. Some teams subscribe to the 4-2-5 where they're running a big nickel or a nickel, meaning they're either going to have a safety in, an extra safety in, or they're going to have another corner in who's going to be the slot guy. Sometimes they bring an extra safety in if they have one of those safeties that can kind of play the slot. And the best example that I'll give you, I know y'all want to hear, is Jalen Ramsey. He was a corner here. Last year, for the most part, he lined up at the star position for the Rams, which is sort of a free safety position. And then he was in the Super Bowl. This is why I told everybody it wasn't nothing against him personally, but I thought that he had a chance to get cooked a couple of times because if he went back to corner and he hadn't played it all year, I saw it in training camp. All the really good corners, when they haven't done it for a minute, their muscle memory, their reflexes are a little bit off. And you saw it in the Super Bowl when Jalen gave up a couple of passes. So the thing is though, with the Rams, whenever they go nickel, if they wanted to bring in an extra safety, Jalen would always leave his star position and just go play corner. He would line up in the slot or either line up outside where the best receiver was. So there are ways that they line up in the NFL, whether it be base 4-3, base 4-2-5, and even with a 3-4 front, you can see a 3-3-5 or a 3-4 with 4 guys in the back. Versatility is at an all-time high. And then DBs make the team a lot of times too because of special teams. DBs and backup linebackers, they make really good special teams players, especially some of these guys that don't get a chance to play much on the punt team and on the kickoff team. That's where you you earn it. You earn it by being able to get down there and make tackles really, really fast. So with that being said, I think the pure numbers suggest that they keep 9 or 10 here in Jacksonville. 9 or 10. But if you guys really pay attention to it, in 2020, I think they drafted 4 defensive backs, including C.J. Henderson. Last year, they drafted 2 more with Andre Cisco as well as Tyson Campbell, and they signed Shaquille Griffin. So that's 2 years in a row where they went out and got like 7 people as priority resources, right? And then this year they signed Darius Williams, and that's another guy. And I think I missed last year they signed Ford too. So yeah, man, it's a Rudy Ford. He's a safety, he's a slot guy, he plays special teams, and they guaranteed his money. So there are a lot of positions. And they re-signed Trey Herndon. And this year they go out late in the draft. They don't address it, but what they do is in free agency. Actually, I think they did address it when they got Monteric. They signed Monteric Brown. So they got 2 guys late, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they did. They got 2 guys late. They got Monteric Brown, and I think they signed somebody else, or they picked up somebody else as a free agency. Brown played at Arkansas, and he played sort of all over the place. They got Greg Jr. That's who it was. Gregory Jr. is the other guy that they picked up, who's a guy who can play some corner for him. So you think those late round picks don't have a chance, but they picked them for a reason. It was because they think they have some value. Now, a lot of these guys, they'll try to hide them on the practice squad. Sometimes guys get a chance to make the team also because guys in front of them, they're paying them a little bit more money. They're veterans. If you don't outperform a guy who just got drafted, we're going to move on from you because we'll go ahead and pay him the league minimum. And then you have injuries in training camp. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what I presume will be a way too early depth chart. And you never know because the coaching staff is so new. You never really know what they're going to do. And like I said, we'll go through this. We'll talk about whether it's going to be a leadership by example with 1 or 2 guys being alphas, or if it will be sort of a group sort of leadership. And then we'll look at who we think is going to really, really make an impact and answer the question, did we just do enough? So we're not really going to follow outline. What we're going to do is just have a good general conversation about the defensive backs because they've used so many resources over the years. Like there's 2 or 3 guys this year, 5 guys 2 years ago, last year, another 3 guys. At some point, some of these guys got to stick, and at some point, they can't be replaceable if they're going to get back to a championship level. We'll discuss that and a few other things here today on Locked On Jaguars after I tell you about Athletic Greens, man. Athletic Greens at AG1 has been a boost for me and a lot of other guys that I know that have taken it. What is it? It's the green stuff. Pour it in a cup full of water and you stir it up and you drink it every single morning, and it takes the place of about 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. It really, really does help you start your day, and it's a special blend of ingredients which supports gut health, and you guys know I've struggled with that recently. Your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, and all of those good things. I'm just not going to stand there and I already take pills. I'm not going to take 10,000 vitamins every day. Why can't I just drink me a cup of AG1 and make it work? I can, and so can you. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Try that AG1 at athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. We thank you for making us your first listen. We're going to get into these defensive backs here on Locked On Jaguars. And it's really an area where the Jaguars fan base have kind of been spoiled. And I'll tell you why they've been spoiled. Maybe not all the time, but during certain periods. The best one is 2017, 2018. The defense was off the chain, and you had a Pro Bowl and an All-Pro corner. You have veterans in Church and Tashawn Gibson at safety. And of course, Jalen outside, he was the main guy. And of course, you had a Pro Bowl on the other side. The thing is that I think folks sort of got spoiled a little bit. And it lasted about this long, so it didn't go on. They have been searching for consistency ever since then, and there was a big gap between that group and the years before when they had guys like Rasheem Mathis, who were very, very good football players. The Jaguars want to get back to that. Last year, when they drafted Tyson Campbell with the first pick of the second round, there are a lot of people that were second guessing that draft choice as if they should have got somebody else. This dude underachieved in college. What are they doing? About 7 or 8 games in, we were like, okay, we get it. We see. And you notice that happens a lot with Jaguar fans. So 7 or 8 games in, it was like, all right, we see this is going to be worth it. There's a big physical, 6'1", 200-pound guy who can really run. And once he got the jitters out, it seems like he's going to be a long-time player at corner. Shaquille Griffin was signed to a 3-year deal. And that's very, very important that we think about. He signed to a 3-year deal. So this is the second year of a 3-year deal for him. He has to really, really play well because last year it was a little bit up and down, and the Jaguars actually went out and signed another guy in free agency in Darius Williams, a Super Bowl champion who happens to be a native of the local guy who's from North Florida. But he got a big deal. He got a pretty big deal. I think it was 3 years, either $39 or $42 million. So they're paying people. They're using high-priority resources in free agency and draft on those top 3 guys. Now, it's yet to be determined. The depth chart that I saw, which is unofficial, and it did not come from the Jaguars, had Darius Williams lined up in the slot. That would be what you would think would happen. The only difficulty with that is this is all projection because he didn't play much slot when he was with the Rams. He played mostly outside. So he's not the biggest guy, but he's super, super athletic, and he does play with a chip on the shoulder. So it'll be a big thing to see exactly where they line up and who actually wins that position. And then you don't know, can Shaq actually line up in the slot? He's really tall. He's like 6'1", maybe 6'1.5". Can he actually line up in the slot, and is that his best position? One of the things I want to see Shaq Griffin improve on is when he gets his hands on the ball, he has to actually catch it. I think he left a couple of pick sixes on the field last year, and then he left a couple of situations where he could have got an interception and changed the course of the game. So I really want to see him have a good training camp where he actually turns the ball over, because those are the things that defensive backs have to do. They have to give you a sudden change of field position, not get beat deep and give up chunk plays, not give up touchdowns in critical junctures. If a team gets first and goal and they're going to throw it 3 times, you need to stop them 3 times and hold them to a field goal. But mainly just not be a liability and not allow teams to continue to convert third downs. You have to be able to get those guys off of the field. So, did they do enough in free agency? That's a great question. They've tried over the years in recent memory, using all of those resources on the defensive backfield. It just, you want that unit to be great. You don't want it to be good. You want it to be very, very good to go along with the pass rush, and they'll work synonymous with the pass rush. Right now, I'm not quite so sure that they're there, but I can't say that they're not there because of lack of effort. Because if you look back, you can go to drafthistory.com and look at the Jaguars and look at by position and see the guys that they've added ever since 2016. A.J. Bouye in free agency to play along with Jalen Ramsey, Church. That 1 year, just think about it. They had Bouye 1 year. The very next year, they added Church, Ramsey, Tashawn Gibson. In fact, I think they added all those 3 guys, and then they drafted Jalen. And none of them are here. We're going to go through the depth chart right now, and we'll talk about the guys that they have on the team. All right. So unofficially, in fact, this is from Hourglass. This is not from Jaguars.com. Left corner is Tyson Campbell. Right corner, Shaquille Griffin. The nickel is Darius Williams. The 2 safeties are Wingard and Jenkins. That sounds about right as long as Rashawn Jenkins is healthy. I know the fans want to run Dewey Wingard out of here, but for some reason, they like him for some reason. And it's 3 separate coaching staffs that have him in a position right now of leadership. So you can't just sit here and think that it's just them. They keep signing Trey Herndon and I think his money is guaranteed. They re-signed him. They have Clay Brooks, who they also use a lot on special teams. He's one of those dudes that they drafted a couple of years ago. The aforementioned Rudy Ford that I talked about, who's a special teams ace, who played a little bit in a slot for him last year and played some safety. And then they have Andre Cisco, who I think is a wild card, who's going to be very, very good. And, of course, they have Daniel Thomas. Then when you look back beyond that, they have the two rookies, Greg Jr. and Monteric Brown. They're listed as the right and left corner. Brandon Rusnick is a safety. After that, it's just too many guys to mention because I think they're going to keep 9 or 10. So if they keep 9 or 10 and all of the incumbents stay, then none of the new guys are going to make it. That means they'll keep Campbell, Griffin, and Williams along with Herndon, and then they'll keep Rudy Ford, Clay Brooks for special teams, Daniel Thomas, Andre Cisco, Andrew Wingard, and Rashawn Jenkins. Is that enough? It'll be enough if Darius Williams is as good as advertised, if Andre Cisco has a big second year and is able to displace Andrew Wingard as the safety, as the starting safety, if Rashawn Jenkins comes back healthy, if Shaquille Griffin plays better than he played last year, and if Tyson Campbell continues his ascension. Now, who are the leaders of that group going to be? I don't know if you necessarily have to have a leader as long as everyone plays together in a group. I don't know if you have to have one guy who is actually considered the leader of that group. Jalen was a leader, but Jalen wasn't very vocal. Well, he was vocal about things that he wanted to be vocal about, but in terms of being that rah-rah guy and coaching his teammates up, that really wasn't him. I mean, he probably was never that dude here. I think he was their fiery guy is what it was. He was also their best player, but here, I don't know. I don't think you can actually assign a group. I know Shaquille Griffin is the one that does the most press conferences, and he's very, very good at that. But I don't know if there's going to be a leader. I think this might have to be a little bit of a group effort. A group effort. My words are getting all switched around today. Must be these meds I'm on. But we're going to talk about how this unit can come together and play together, and how important it is for them to blend in and make sure that they play in cohesion with this new pass rush the Jags have. And we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I let you guys know about our partners at BetOnline, because BetOnline continues to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You need to find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs. Yet again, another blowout last night. Major League Baseball scores, a big fight with Tank Davis and Raleigh Romero this weekend, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, live betting, playoffs, esports, and all of that stuff and a bunch more. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. You guys start here with me every day on Locked On Jaguars, making us your first listen, and we are very, very much appreciative of you doing that. Make sure you tune in on all of our platforms, wherever you find us, whether it be audio or video. Also, I'm just reminding you that your second listen or your next listen should be the Locked On Sports Today podcast with my man Peter Bukowski. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast. Leadership or committee? That's a big question. Is it important to have a leader in the secondary, or is it just important for you guys to play together and play in cohesion with each other and understand how you guys have to play in order for the defensive line to be able to be effective? It's two different ways of looking at it. I'd rather have the Ed Reed way, but in order to have the Ed Reed way, which means you have a quarterback, which means you have a leader in the back, in order to have a Ed Reed way or a Earl Thomas way, I know it's a little weird mentioning Earl Thomas, but besides all of the stuff he's gotten into lately, he was a great football player with the Legion of Boom. I do think you can lead with one person, but in order for that one person to be a leader, that one person has to be a good enough player that guys are going to listen to. Right now, there's no Ed Reed. There's no Ed Reed nowhere else, but there's no one even approaching that in terms of Jacksonville right now. I think the closest we might see it happen is if Andre Cisco develops the way we think he has the potential to develop. He's now 2 years removed from an ACL injury that cost him probably being a first-round pick. Now it's time for Andre Cisco to step it up and be the emotional leader of this group. If not, then what you have is just you'll have a group of guys, I think, by committee. And that's fine too, as long as they jive and play together. It does not matter. I don't know if they're ever going to get I don't know if they're ever going to get a nickname. I've always said my favorite nickname for any DB group, because they play most of their games on Sunday, is Pick-fil-A, because nobody's open on Sunday. I love it. I always loved it. I was going to get a shirt and probably copyright that stuff, but now I ain't got time for it. So I'm going to drop my microphone, but I ain't got time for that kind of stuff. But in any event, what we're going to get is you're going to get a group that may be more like the group back when Rasheem Mathis, even though he was the best player in the group, they still sort of played more as a unit because Rasheem's a very quiet guy, as opposed to just having that one alpha dog who's the leader of the secondary. Like I said, Shaquille Griffin is the guy that you'll hear most from during press conferences. I'm not so sure that he even wins his starting job this year unless this regime just knows that they're going to put Darius Williams at slot, and that's just what it is. He makes a lot of money for a guy who's just going to play in the slot. Now, I'm not saying just play in the slot because as if it's like a position that they don't use very often. 65 to 70% of the league has sort of been in a situation where they have 3 DBs on the field, 3 corners on the field at the same time. So your nickel, teams are in nickel a lot more than you would suspect they are. And it still makes the guy making a lot of money, gives him a chance to be a little bit of a part-time player, especially if the Jaguars get behind. Because if you get behind, the other team's going to probably try to run the ball. So now you need to have your best guys in the game. And if you paid that much money for Darius Williams to be in the game and he's not, that kind of looks like you're hustling backwards a little bit. But the question is, did they do enough? I will say up to this point, yes, they did. Because they didn't rest on their laurels at corner with just Shaquille Griffin and with Trey Herndon being the third guy behind Griffin and Tyson Campbell. They actually went out and got another player who's a proven player who gives you some toughness and is actually going to push Shaquille Griffin for competition. It's an iron sharpens iron situation. I like the pickups of the rookies, Monteric Brown. I like the fact that they made that addition because you always want to create competition. I like the fact that they picked up Greg Jr., who's been super, super versatile as well in college. Look for those guys to push and challenge guys like Rudy Ford, Chris Claybrooks, who may be in trouble. Trey Herndon, even though he got re-signed, I don't know if a bunch of his money is guaranteed, but he could also be in trouble. I look for these young guys to come in camp and really push forward, and at least one of those guys I think is going to make the team. Now, in terms of the safeties, Rudy Ford, his presence is critical. Daniel Thomas might be in a little bit of trouble. Andrew Wingard might be in a little bit of trouble if Andre Cisco can take his lunch money as long as Rashawn Jenkins is back healthy. I also want to see if they're going to sort of run split safeties or if they're going to use a little bit more single high. That's going to be a telltale situation also. Now, if they play it like they played in Tampa, who's going to be the Antoine Winfield of this group? And I think that's going to be Andre Cisco. That's why I hold him in real, real high regard. I think he's actually going to have a shot to get that done. You guys have a shot to be here with me every day on Locked On Jaguars as we review and preview a lot of what we're going to have questions and things that we're going to talk about when this team gets to training camp. Make sure you tune in every single day. I think I'll be at minicamp next Tuesday. I think I did tell you guys that I RSVP'd to go out to minicamp next Tuesday and get all the information that I can from how things are going in camp. But right now, I think they have enough bodies. I just think they have to figure out who's going to be the leaders and who's going to be the guys that will lead the team out of the tunnel. And if it's going to be leadership by committee, so be it. As long as they get the job done, they're going to have to learn how to jive with the guys up front. Because when you start rushing a passer, guys on the back end have to be alert. They have to also know when the quarterback is scrambling. So I give it a good 2 or 3 weeks into training camp before we actually start seeing these units be able to come together and get on the same page. You can be on the same page with me every day here on Locked On Jaguars because it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Also, make sure you do check out Locked On Sports Today as well as the Locked On NFL podcast, which is everywhere you get your podcast. I have an episode out every Wednesday, but from Monday through Friday, we get guys from around the Locked On Podcast Network all over the country that give it to you like you can't get it anywhere else. We are local. We are your team every day, and we appreciate you making us your first listen. Do what I always say, man. You guys take care of each other, and we will see you here again for another episode on Locked On Jaguars.